Hi, John. John Shearer. You're very well known as a meditation master, and can you tell us just? And you teach mindfulness, and I believe you have many adherents and followers, don't you?
Yes, it's been quite a journey actually, Michael. Would you like to hear a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'd love to find out how many followers you have, and I know you teach about mindfulness, and perhaps you can tell us a bit about mindfulness and why it's becoming so popular now. I mean, everybody's talking about it, and can you tell us about mindfulness and about your journey? That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start just about my own journey. On 9th of June 1982, I died in a truck smash down your way, actually, near Kilmore in the fog. And obviously they revived me and I had many physical injuries and which required operations and things. But the lasting thing from that accident was 15 years of really bad depression. I had highs and lows and on all sorts of medications. I was suicidal at one stage. It was, I call that now my dark years because 15 years of darkness. And then a friend, he was passing through Wagga Wagga, where I was living at that time, and he had a spiritual prompt, what he called a spiritual prompt, to come and knock on my door and tell me my story. And that changed my life. And he left. He kept travelling, and I haven't been able to find him ever since. He has no idea what he did that day. Anyhow, it changed my life, and then from there, I got up to, excuse me, 2009, prompted by my wife's asthma. I lost a friend to an asthma attack, and my wife was using the same breathing apparatus and nebulizer at the time. So we decided to move north, and I thought, well, what will I do? And even through those dark years, I still had this inner a type of calling. I knew there was a reason somehow why I was saved in that accident, and I still trained as a counsellor. So I thought I'll go back counselling. So I surfed the internet to find out what the very latest therapies were and what was happening in the world of mental health. And what I found was a book called The Happiness Trap by Dr. Russ Harris. And the Happiness Trap is about ACT, which is a very simple therapy. And ACT stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And it's very much a mindfulness-based therapy. Anyhow, in 2009, I went along and got Dr. Russ Harris to train me as an ACT therapist, but it was mindfulness that I fell in love with. Wow. You know, mindfulness, quite simply, is retraining your mind to be in the present moment. It's quite a simple thing, not easy to do. In the early days, the hardest thing was to actually remember to do it, to practice. And a mindful practice is called a practice because you really need to practice, you know. So mindfulness, well, if you dwell on the past a lot, you may become depressed. If you dwell on the future a lot, you may become anxious. So the idea is to train your mind to come back to the present moment. When you notice your thoughts, particularly unhelpful or negative thoughts, then I always teach people to use the key thought, be mindful. And the key thought actually triggers a pausing of your mind. Just pause. 5 seconds is great to start because the reason why it's not an easy thing to do is because our minds are like radio stations. They just go 24/7, blah, 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 blah. And my mind back in my dark years was, I had the mind of a drunken monkey all over the place. Wow. But these days, thanks to a mindful practice, I have clarity of mind and peace of mind, both. And life is wonderful. Yeah.
And I believe you have a mentorship program, don't you?
Yes. Here's another significant date, really. 11/11/11. That's the day I launched my Facebook page, Mindfulness Coach. And today it has over 700,000 likes.
Wow.
It's not so much my good content, but people get tips there for mental well-being. And of course, you know, in the early days, I just shared it with my family and friends, and they liked it, and they shared it, and so on. It's been quite amazing. So mindfulness, back in those days when I decided to be a mindfulness coach, because, well, even though I am a trained counsellor, I don't really like the term counsellor because it infers that something is wrong. And the truth is, people just get stuck, you know. And mindfulness is just such a beautiful way to become unstuck. So I decided to call myself a coach. And in 5 years ago, when I started handing out a business card saying mindfulness coach, people would always say, "What's mindfulness?" But today, I'm still handing out many cards because I do a lot of public speaking and talks and things, especially since I've written my book. But people never ask me now what mindfulness is because it's becoming more mainstream, which needs to happen. You know, it's beautiful. Yeah.
So, what is actually mindfulness? I mean, if you were to, somebody's watching this at the moment and they wanted to try and put it into action in their lives, what is mindfulness? What is the ingredient that makes it so popular, and what is the ingredient that you have in your particular way of teaching it that attracts so many people to you? What do you think is the situation?
What I've done, Michael, I've just shared my screen.
Yeah.
And I'll just show you this because it's been steps, because when you pause your mind and get in the habit of pausing your mind, it may be 5 seconds to start, but you can stretch that. By the time you can actually pause your mind for 20 seconds, wow, then you start to receive. And let's take Christians, for example. Christians pray, but they don't necessarily listen. And mindfulness enables that. You pause and you receive. And that way, your life prioritizes itself. And then the next step comes. Because what we really need to realise is that there's a plan bigger than us, a much bigger plan. And it's just wonderful when you realise that you are actually part of that plan. And something that I said in my book, if love was an ocean, Michael, if love was an ocean, and with 7 billion people on the planet, we may only be a drop in the ocean. But we are still part of that ocean. Yeah. So it's very good.
So you're really saying, it's really saying, dip yourself into the ocean.
Yeah. So this year, my next step, because I've done a lot of one-on-one mentoring with people over the years, and this year my step is to teach people how to teach mindfulness.
Right.
Okay. This is one that I did a few years ago. It's an acronym: mindful, moment-to-moment attention, in the here and now, non-judgmental attitude, detach from unhelpful thoughts, forgive and be grateful, unconditional acceptance, and learn with childlike mindset. And when you look at children, they're just naturally mindful. They go from one thing to the next, and they play, and they're happy, and they're joyful, they're curious, and their life just flows. And then somehow life happens to us, you know, and we kind of lose that. But we really need to get back to that. So this is actually the first part of my mindfulness mentoring course. So to answer your question, what mindfulness is, I'm going to share what mindfulness is not. This is actually something that I wrote for Elephant Journal, which has 5 million readers monthly. It's a big journal, worldwide journal.
Wow.
And I sent this in, and they've accepted me as a writer now, which is really, really good. What mindfulness is not. One thing for certain, mindfulness is not easy, but it is simple. It doesn't come naturally. That's why it requires much practice. Mindfulness just means noticing what's happening, including the things we find difficult. It doesn't involve listening to panpipes or escape your worries. It isn't a meditation practice. And I'd like to clarify that because you introduced me as a meditation expert, but meditation does lead to mindfulness and vice versa. Mindfulness leads to meditation, but they're not really the same thing.
Right.
Meditation is more a relaxation thing, and it's wonderful for relieving stress. And meditation is great, But mindfulness is a way of living your life. You know, it applies to your whole life, your work, your family, your playtime, everything. It's just such a wonderful thing, being fully present, because that way life won't pass you by. So I thought I'd just clarify that. It isn't about emptying your mind, even though it is about pausing your thoughts. But minds produce thoughts, that's what they're built for. You can become calm and settled by learning to accept your thoughts, making room for them, or letting them go. It is always good to remind yourself that thoughts are just that, thoughts. Excuse me. No need to dwell on them, fight with them, act on them, or try to avoid them. Like a lot of people do, they use drugs and alcohol to avoid their thoughts. You know, the idea is to let them flow. It isn't a technique. Mindfulness isn't something you do. It's a way of being. It isn't a way to fix our problems. Mindfulness has evolved and has now become the merging of ancient Eastern philosophy and the latest in Western psychology. And that's really what it is. And the beauty of mindfulness is that it is not a religion at all. However, all religions could greatly benefit from having a mindful practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a few thoughts on what mindfulness is not. I think you're starting to get a little idea.
Yeah, I'm getting a general idea. I like the idea of this love that we embrace ourselves in, that we imbibe, that we dissolve in. That is the great, isn't it? The great release, that you're loved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you saw my talk on Wednesday.
Yeah, I didn't see it. No.
I was part of a love revolution. I was invited to talk.
Oh, really?
And I talked about one love just this week. That went to air. There was a series of speakers that were invited around the world.
Yeah.
To a love revolution seminar. It was very interesting. But I talked about one love, and one love. Well, there's a thing that I came up with in 2008. My kids asked me to go on Facebook because they're all over Australia. I said, "What's Facebook?" Sure, I'll have a look at it. So I had a look at it and I thought, yeah, this looks great. Great way of sharing photos and things. And then I got to the part filling in my profile that said religion and politics. So for religion, I thought for a moment and I said, we are all one. One with spirit, one with life. So for me, and since then, of course, I've found out that there's a growing thing happening in the world called oneness.
Yeah.
And it needs to happen because we are all one. And once we realise that, it's quite a simple thing.
I think all the DNA in the world could be put together into one teardrop.
One teardrop?
Yep, I think so. It's not much.
No, but really, we are all one.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, that is so powerful. I really believe that love is the absence of fear. I also believe one of the greatest fears in the world today is the fear of what other people are thinking. That stops hundreds of thousands of people from fulfilling their purpose, that very thing.
Absolutely. You know? Political correctness, completely correct.
Oh, yes.
But I mean, be yourself, but don't at the same time hurt other people.
Exactly.
And
absolutely.
It's a political, and also the thing is, this oneness is so important. I think this is the biggest problem in religions, and that people just don't seem to realize that we come from a common God, a one source, and everybody seems to fight over their beliefs. I think mindfulness seems to be a wonderful way of maintaining that connectedness, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So this year, my step is, like I said, I've started to train people how to teach mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about the keys to mindfulness mentoring. And of course, a mentor is a wise and trusted teacher, coach, or counsellor. It covers a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's also parents. Parents are also mentors as well. So I was starting to think about the keys to mindfulness mentoring. And then in typical universe style, I was woken up in the middle of the night with another acronym, and this acronym is PACE. Can you see it on the screen there, Michael? PACE.
It's almost peace, isn't it?
Almost peace. Yeah. Wow, you could put another letter in there, E. For sure.
Yeah.
But PACE.
Yeah.
And these are the main keys for mindfulness mentoring, but they're also the main keys for mindfulness itself: presence, awareness, connection, and empathy. And I can just say a little bit about each. Presence. Actually, I've done a summary down here. Presence. Mindfulness mentors maintain a deep level of presence in the session. When we notice our minds being distracted, we use the key thought, be mindful, and come back to the present moment. This includes thinking about what to say next or what question to ask. We have full confidence in the process and know that those things will come along when they are meant to. And presence is really, really important in our relationships with our loved ones too. Because I don't know if you've ever had your kids say, "Dad, have you been listening to me?" Or "Mum, where were you just then?" Because you're a million miles away. So being fully present with your loved ones and your colleagues and so on is so important, and when people aren't present with you, So it's only fair to be present with them. And awareness is actually the very essence of mindfulness, is awareness. It's being fully aware, using all your five senses. And part of my training is I introduced the silent observer. And the silent observer is our sixth sense. And it's so important to be able to step back and be the silent observer. In other words, pause your mind and be awareness itself. And that way you're able to step back and observe your thoughts rather than getting all caught up in them. Because our thoughts even are just another dimension of who we are. So awareness is really important. Mindfulness mentors realize the very essence of mindfulness is awareness in its purest form. Awareness through all our senses, both of ourselves and the mentee. Awareness of things like body language, facial expression, comfort levels, and tone of voice. Most importantly is awareness of who we are and helping the mentee to become aware of who they are. And connection is the next one, and we've talked a little bit about that we are all one. And they're connections using intuition, if you like. And when we learn to trust our intuition through connection with the mentee and with other people, but also connection with the universe as well, both are so important. And we already talked a little bit about pausing our minds so that we can receive from the universe. It's a very real thing. And I believe it's the missing link in a lot of university training. Because believing in, how can you teach about things unseen, if they're not scientifically proven? I think that's how they think in universities. So, I really believe it's the missing link today, and it's something that needs to be done somehow. And I think mindfulness is the tool that, do you remember Dr. Julius Sumner Miller, Michael? Many years ago, he did a series of TV shows. He did a lot of experiments. The Australian doctor, Dr. Julius Sumner Miller. Well, one that he did, he filled a room up with mouse traps, thousands of mouse traps, and with a ping pong ball on each. And then using a slow motion camera, or slow motion in those days, and he threw in a ping pong ball. And then, of course, when it landed, it set one off. And then there was 2 in the air, then 4, 8, 16, 32. You get the idea.
Yeah.
And in no time, the room was just full of ping pong balls going everywhere. And I really believe mindfulness is in the early stages of that.
I see, right.
Yep.
So I think it's really important. I mean, would build up understanding of our relationship with each other, and also particularly in medicine, if doctors were taught mindfulness, it might make a big difference to how they relate to each other as well as to their patients.
Absolutely, Doc. Yes, I thoroughly agree with you. I know with my own battle with depression in those early days, wow, wouldn't I just love to be referred to a mindfulness coach back then? There really wasn't any such thing, of course, but there is there.
Yeah, but in medicine and in hospitals,
Yeah,
unfortunately, there's not that same understanding of this process, because if it would lead to a whole different technology and way of healing, because you start bringing in holism and mind body and understanding the patient and understanding the power of connectedness in terms of healing would lead to a completely different industry, because you begin to have a medical industry based on loving. It would gradually develop, presumably, wouldn't you, with this kind of process? Would you think so?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen,
Yeah.
Michael.
Yes.
Big time. If the world's going to change, can you see me again?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I saw you before.
Okay. Yeah.
You're just a bit reduced on the screen. You're still there.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I really believe the way forward for the world is mindfulness.
Yeah.
The more people that are practicing mindfulness and telling their story, and what I did actually, I'll just show you the bottom part of that picture again.
Yeah.
I know I won't. I'll tell you about it. Mindfullymad.org.
Oh, that's your website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an organisation I've started, and I've already got mindfulness mentors in all the capital cities around Australia. And now people are starting to connect with me from around the world, UK and USA, New Zealand. And it's just a website, mindfullymad.org. And people can go there and find a mindfulness mentor, or get listed there.
Why mad?
It's all free.
Why mad?
MAD stands for making a difference. So it's actually mindfully making a difference.org. Yeah, mindfullymad.org. Yeah, these things come to me.
It is different from the way people normally go about life. It's a positive advance in the way we can change the world and create a better world, a world that's not going to no longer be a tipping point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Michael, I really believe, like, religions haven't been able to do it, and governments certainly haven't been able to do it. But we can, one person at a time, by telling our story and lifting each up, inspiring one another. And that way it can come from grassroots. I can't see any other way of making it happen. And we really need to get mindfulness into schools. That's very important because, a lot of people our age, it's all over. But young kiddies learning mindfulness would greatly reduce bullying, for one thing.
Yeah.
And later on in life, it would greatly reduce depression and anxiety around HSC time. And at the same time, it would greatly boost creativity.
Yeah.
And I said this last year at a conference down in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And that is, we need to be teaching our children how to think, not necessarily what to think. Big difference.
Yes, right. And you've got so many things there in mindfulness and the way you teach it that really brings out that intuitive capacity and creative capacity. So it's wonderful what you're doing, John. It's absolutely fabulous. And really, really grateful for having the privilege of listening to you today and talking to you.
Michael.
And thank you so much for being part of our Shifting Paradigms conference being held on the 12th of December, and also part of our new Paradigm TV, which we hope will get a global audience. I'm sure we will have a global audience which will learn about mindfulness. So we'll put up your connection so people can contact you if necessary, when they wish to. I'm sure they'd love to.
Thank you, Michael, and keep up the good work yourself.
Thank you so much.
That's what the world needs. More people getting fired up to make a difference.
That's right. Let's do it together. Take care. It's wonderful seeing you.
Righto. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.